Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Radical Disruption. I'm talking all about barriers to entry in today's episode. I was listening to a podcast episode a few weeks ago, and she was talking about scripture study. And at the very end, she mentioned how she wanted her community to connect with her on Substack, which the link for her Substack was down in the show notes. And she really, really emphasized, like, please connect with me on Substack because I'm not going to be on Instagram as much as I'm going to be on Substack. And she talked about how much she likes Substack because she can just hop on Substack and she can write. Whereas on Instagram, there's so much pressure to hop on and make something cute or add a little meme or have like the perfect edits and aesthetics. And let me just say, this is coming from someone who's an Instagram expert. So this means a lot, okay? If Instagram feels like a heavy lift every time you hop on the platform or go to create content for that platform, find something that doesn't. Find the platform that you can create content for that dissolves the barrier to entry and then repurpose that onto other platforms. Now, what does barrier to entry mean? It means anything that makes it harder for you to either start or take consistent action. It means that it's the thing that stops you from creating or showing up easily. Now, if in this case, with this girl that was talking on the podcast episode, she's like, it is hard for me to show up on Instagram consistently. Her barrier to entry is creating content for Instagram because she feels like it needs to be perfect and cute and aesthetic and all these things. What she can do is hop onto Substack because there is no barrier to entry there. She can hop on and she feels like it flows and she can just write whatever she wants to write and just post it. What she can then do is take that Substack. I don't even know what it's called on Substack. Is it called a blog post? Is it called an email? I don't know. She can take that written format though, and she can break that up into bite-sized pieces that can go on carousel slides that she can then post on Instagram, right? And so she maybe is going to create this template. This is what I would recommend. She's going to create this template that she can just easily plug her copy from Substack into this carousel template inside of Canva, and then she can export that and post that onto Instagram. And so therefore, she's still showing up on Instagram, but she doesn't have that huge barrier to entry like she would have if she was trying to just create content for Instagram. And so she's taking this platform where it's easy for her to show up consistently. And now she's able to use that same information on other platforms and show up consistently there as well. Because if you have a big barrier to entry, you are not going to be consistent. Or maybe you're hecka dedicated and that's fantastic and you're consistent even though that there is that barrier there, but you're resentful when it comes to creating that content and your heart just isn't in it. And so you're just showing up to show up and just to check something off of your to-do list. And I promise you, if that's how you were showing up, your community can tell. And I know that you can tell as well. Like when you go to post something that your heart is just not in it, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to post this because I know that I need to post today or I haven't posted, in the last few days. So I just need to post something. There's a different energy there than when you are so lit up by that content and you're like, I know that someone out there needs to see and hear whatever it is that I'm sharing today. Like there's such a different energy there, and that's how I want you to feel when it comes to creating content. And so if you're not feeling that on Instagram, shift platforms and find where you do feel lit up to create content. Maybe that is a podcast, and you can take your podcast episode and you can turn that then into a reel. Or maybe that is YouTube for you, and you can take those YouTube videos and turn them then into reels, or turn them into TikToks, or turn them into YouTube shorts. Like there's so much that you can do. Like you don't have to be so focused on creating content only for Instagram if that feels like a huge barrier to entry for you. Or maybe the platform itself isn't the barrier to entry. Maybe it's the editing itself that keeps you from posting. You're like, I actually really like Instagram and I love the community that I've built there, but I am not really great at posting consistently because of the editing part. Well, how can you dissolve that barrier to entry? Maybe you can hire someone to do your edits for you. Maybe you can choose to do carousels over reels, and maybe there's less editing to do with carousels because you can build out templates there. Or maybe you could just challenge yourself to do it all in one take if you're doing a talking reel instead of doing like 20 different pieces that you have to piece together, because then that's going to add a lot of editing, right? And this applies for anything in your business, not just content creation, not just social media platforms. Asking yourself, what am I not doing that I need to be doing? And also asking yourself, what feels heavy in my business right now? And then asking, in regards to the answers to that, to both of those questions, what is one thing that I can do today to shift that? how can I dissolve the barrier to entry? For me, podcasting actually is there's a huge barrier to entry. It feels like a really heavy lift for me to create podcast content. But I also at the same time know the benefits of doing it. And also, I just love chatting on here. If I'm being quite honest with you, I love chatting with you. But for me to start this podcast back up again in this season of life, being so busy with two littles and like the business that I'm running and like the hobbies that I have, and we have a homestead here, and just there's just a lot that happens in life. It doesn't matter what season of life that you are in, there's a lot that's always happening. And so I asked myself, what's the biggest barrier to doing this, to having this podcast and showing up here in this platform consistently again? And there were two things for me. Number one was perfection. That was my biggest barrier for sure. And so I asked myself, obviously, what is the barrier to entry? And I figured out, okay, perfection is. What can I now do about that? How can I dissolve that barrier? And for me, that was creating a podcast. When I show up and record, that's just how it is. There's no intros, there's no outros, there's no editing. It is just real raw talk. I'm not cutting out dead space. You are just getting exactly how I would say it to you if we were sitting down having coffee, or sitting down and or even if I was just voice messaging you, right? You are going to get it the real, raw, and unedited version. And that is helping me to step outside of my need for perfection, but still being able to show up in this platform consistently. And then the second thing that I found was a barrier to entry was time, the time commitment. And so I committed to keeping these podcast episodes short and sweet, 5 to 15 minutes. I'm committed to just getting straight to the facts, short chats that are just giving you exactly what you need to hear, no fluff whatsoever. And so that is an example of how I took a platform that did have a barrier to entry and I broke it down into something that is no longer a barrier, and it allows me to show up consistently. And I also too am getting a little bit more strategic now with, okay, if I am going to be spending the time on this podcast, how can I better make sure that I'm able to repurpose this content onto other platforms? And I was doing that when I had the podcast prior, before I went on a break, but I really am strategic about it now. Like I'm even recording a reel. I have my phone set up and I have this mic right here that's recording through my reel format. So it's like the up and down, like the portrait instead of landscape, because when I record the podcast episode, I'm also using it on YouTube, but YouTube needs landscape, but reels need portrait. And so I'm a little bit more strategic now with how I'm actually going to use this content from the podcast, because I know that it's so juicy and so good. And I want as many people as possible to hear this, but also too, just knowing that like that's going to help there be even less of a barrier to entry, knowing that like this is going to be able to touch people in more places than just the podcast too. So today I want you to ask yourself, what should I be doing that I'm not doing? And what can I do to dissolve that barrier to entry for whatever it is in your business? Maybe it is a funnel that you need to be creating. Okay, what is my barrier to entry with that funnel? Maybe it is having these perfectly created emails. Okay, well, what if I just, instead of creating copyrighted emails, what if I just did my best with those emails, put it out there, and then put it on my to-do list to actually come back and tweak the things that are simply not working once I have data? Or maybe your barrier to entry, something that you should be doing is hiring someone. Okay, well, what step can you take to dissolve that barrier to entry to hiring someone? Okay, well, maybe you can post an application on your Instagram stories today to just start moving yourself forward, right? Or maybe the barrier to entry with hiring is that it's going to be like this long, drawn out process where you're going to have to train someone. Okay, well, maybe instead of hiring someone who's going to be an employee where I'm going to have to train them, maybe I'm going to hire an independent contractor who already has systems in place, who already knows the things. And so I'm not going to have to train them, right? So really asking yourself, what things should I be doing? What things do I need to be doing to move my business forward to hit my goals? And how can I dissolve the barrier to entry?